the spiritual world.
Yeah.
Now, we're not doing so well in
metaphysics, beyond the physical, the metaphysical, right?
But Einstein had a lot to say about that, too. He wrote essays on science and religion, and of course, so many people think that the two are in opposition. Well, that's because you're too much focused on either one or the other,
right?
And you don't seem to understand.
They may be two sides of the same coin. One can't exist without the other
well,
one.
they're going to overlap, and you're going to get into a lot of, I guess, metaphysical icon people. And of course, I grew up learning that my grandmother was the wife of a chaplain in the Army. My mother, who was the daughter of my grandmother, you know, it's a piece of trivia, but her name was Marion Moon.
Isn't that synchronistic?
And she met my father in the Philippines right after World War I. And my father was an aviation pioneer, so when I came along as the third child, they had just moved into a new place. My father was in the reserve of the Air Corps, working for Standard Oil, New Jersey, and timing was just right because he had the occasion to cash in some of the stock that he had in the company to buy a house just weeks prior to the crash of the stock market in 1929, before I was born. Now, I will have to admit that I've been in the right place at the right time in many, many
yes, you have.
aspects. But as a child, I grew up with a family that was reasonably religious, not overly so. My grandmother probably more than my mother or father. But I grew up reading the responsive reading in the church, and Sunday school, and the football coach of a high school team was a Sunday school teacher, and I wanted to be a good position on the football team, so I paid attention to what he was saying. Then, of course, I went to West Point, and in those days, it was just an accepted thing that beautiful chapel up there at West Point, that everyone went to the chapel.
But all that spiritual upbringing that you had, and so going to the moon for you was probably very much a spiritual experience, not only a scientific journey.
See, I carried parts of that with me as I went through my Air Force career. I don't think I thought too much about religious matters when I was in combat and shooting down other airplanes where we weren't really supposed to be. But, you know, we were relying pretty much on what we had been told, and we certainly didn't have the impression that a higher power, a spiritual God of some sort, was looking after our safety. It just didn't appear that way. Going through flying training, some people have engine failures, and they get killed during training. Not because they retribution for some kind of behavior. It just sort of seemed to play out. So I was on alert during the Cold War with nuclear weapons on the airplane.
Wow.
Now that's coming to grips with some pretty drastic set of circumstances that all of a sudden could propel you into a pretty drastic situation.
And not just you, but many other people as well. Maybe humankind.
Yeah, and I think I understand what you're saying, and that's contemplating whether what you are about to do maybe is proper or not.
Right.
But I grew up with a motto of duty, honor, country. And it's your duty to carry out the assignment that you're given as you take an oath to serve your country. So there's not a questioning of authority.
Right, exactly.
And I guess years later, during the Vietnam War, I used to really resent seeing that kind of a bumper sticker. And I understand that people down below need to understand what the big picture is, and leadership means informing your people what's going on. But when a guy says, follow me, we're going to charge that hill because the enemy's up there, you don't question authority. You do what you're asked to do.
I know. My dad used to tell me that because my dad was in the Army and he was at the Pentagon in communications. And I would ask my dad what he thought about things sometimes, and he said, you know what? I didn't really think about it. I was taught to follow authority.
That's right. Absolutely.
In the spiritual realm, it's like, you know, we don't have to follow authority, and it's like it's our duty to follow that voice inside and forget everything we've been told. And it's like that's our final frontier, is that inner search.
But where does that voice inside come from? You know, I kind of understand a person dedicated to what they're doing when they begin to see that not everything they've been striving for kind of plays out the way they wanted it to play out. And sooner or later you're going to have to deal with those. And then you've got frustrated, disappointment, driving for something that you really want, and it clouds your judgment. So I can understand, not condone, but I can understand a lot that's behind that. Now maybe I just lived an interesting life, having some bachelor times and putting my life back together again after thinking that depression was my problem that I inherited, and finding that it was alcoholism also combined with that, and I had to come to grips with that at a crucial time in life. It was when I left structured existence. So I've gradually put things slowly back together again, and have 28 years of sobriety now. And that is something that is probably a more difficult thing that I've really ever had to do, but the most maybe crucial.
Well, I admire you for that, because I mean that tells me that not only have you gone to the depths of the sea and out to the edges of space, but you've also gone on the inner journey all the way in. I mean, 28 years, there must have been so much that you've discovered about yourself inside of there. You know, like someone said that whether we're climbing to Mount Everest or we're trying to get that big corporate deal to merger, or you know, whether we're trying to, it's all that we're trying to reach the abode of God. And at the end of all of our searching and at the end of all of our exploration is to arrive at the place we started and to know that place for the first time.
Fascinating experiences in this recovery, hearing a lot of great wisdom from people that have that have turned their lives around, and they're beginning to understand what you're able to do and what you're not able to do, and what you have to seek help and assistance for.